Blackpool Pleasure Beach is an amusement park in high demand at the minute. With restrictions lessened, normality feeling closer than it's been for some time, and restrictions on travel to most of the world, Blackpool as a whole has been very busy, which is great, but also leads to complaining about crowds and queues across the resort. In today's video, my focus is on Blackpool Pleasure Beach and my recommendations on how to beat the queues. For the record, I rarely believe comments I read suggesting it has only been possible to do 2 rides in 6 or more hours at the Pleasure Beach, unless that was your choice of course, and not through being in 2 ride queues for 3 or more hours at a time. The first and most important tip here is don't be a sheep. By this I mean don't be drawn into the masses heading to the big one and Icon first, even if they're the most obvious rides to start with. The big one since it opened has always attracted the biggest queues in the morning. So whilst its area and Icon's area is full of people waiting, other rides will have opened earlier or be opening and will have no queues at all. Please note it is not guaranteed these rides will be available at the time of opening when you visit Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and therefore I take no responsibility for the opening times being slightly different than what they're advertised as. If the Pleasure Beach is advertised as a 10 AM opening time when you're visiting, arrive in Blackpool between 9 AM and 9:30 AM at the latest. The last thing you want to be doing is wasting time looking for parking spaces because the masses have already found their spaces or are in the queue to get into the park before you've even arrived. Arriving early and getting in the queue at the main entrance means you're likely to be one of the first in the park, which means you can start getting some of the rides done straight away. Once you're in the park, I don't recommend running over to the big one or Icon straight away, as tempting as it may be, but instead do the rides which always have a long queue later in the day, but not when they first open, because those rides don't really move their queues as well as rides like the big one and Icon, let's say. Rides such as Ice Blast, Nickelodeon Streak, Blue Flyer, Avalanche, Revolution, Steeplechase and Skyforce tend to be much quieter in the first hour of the day compared to the rest of the day. If you were to do those rides in the first hour or 90 minutes, let's say, that's 7 rides already done, and the fears of doing 2 rides in 6 or more hours are gone. So where to go after Skyforce? By this point, the morning rush from the big one and Icon may have settled down, so you're near them, so why not do them? Alternatively, leave those for a little bit later on and head back to the entrance of the park, because by the time you've done the other rides mentioned, the Grand National may have opened at its advertised 11 AM opening time and hopefully won't be too busy in its first hour. The Grand National is another one of those rides that once it has a big queue, it seems to have it for the day, and it doesn't move a queue at the same speed as Icon moves its queue. So if you've done the big one and Icon after Skyforce, you're probably at 9 rides after 3.5 hours, maybe less, maybe more. Or if you've headed back to the Grand National, chances are you'll have been able to do that, and then other nearby attractions which also open at 11, like the Derby Racer, the Flying Machines and the Ghost Train. It may all sound too good to be true, but this is genuinely how I go about clocking up a big ride count when I'm at Blackpool Pleasure Beach on the busier days, and it's something that I've done for the best part of 15 years now on the crowded days. It does have to be mentioned here that on opening day I do always go to the big one first, but that's just because it's a personal tradition to always go on that as the first ride of the year. Because the Pleasure Beach is a 42-acre site with rides and attractions all over the park, queue lines have always looked busier than they perhaps are, especially the big one when its extensions are filled with people waiting. A prime example here is a Big Dipper. Thinking about it, the queue can look horrendously long from the pathways by it, but in truth it absolutely shifts its queue most of the time whilst running on a 2-train service. A special mention to the Big Dipper team here, who have turned the Big Dipper into the queue munching ride of 2021 at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Sometimes, even if the queues look massive, it is better to get in the queue for the ride you want to do. Anticipate it's going to take a while, and you may be surprised at how quickly the queue has moved. But just to make this clear, I do not recommend waiting in big queues when you first get in the park. Maximise your time by doing the rides with little or no queues whilst you've got the chance. So as a recap, arrive well before the 10 AM opening time, get in the queue to get into the park, and be decisive about what ride you're going to do first. Ice Blast, Nickelodeon Streak, Blue Flyer, Avalanche, Revolution, Steeplechase and Skyforce will all be at their quietest in the first hour to 90 minutes, and from there you can make the decision on if you're going to wait for the big one and Icon at that point, or head back to the start, doing things like the Grand National, Derby Racer, Flying Machines and Ghost Train. To be honest, if I was after the best possible ride count, I'd always opt for the latter option. The only time I'd have a different thought process is if the big one was touch and go due to high winds. Of course, these suggestions are simply just suggestions, and not me saying you must do this or something like that. I'm just trying to help anyone who watches this video get the most out of their next visit to Blackpool Pleasure Beach when it's busy. Speedy Pass is an option if you simply don't want to wait in long queues, but I will cover that in a new video coming to the channel shortly. Before wrapping up on this video, there's 3 more things to mention quickly. So firstly, e-tickets are now being scanned at every ride in the station before you get on the rides. If you can, take a power bank with you to help keep your phone charged. And secondly, it's worth knowing you can still get wristbands if you really want to, but you must book in advance before doing anything else. Lately there's been lots of garbage articles about ride stoppages at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and whilst I know I shouldn't draw attention to them, I want to use this platform to say, ignore the noise being created to put places down like Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Ride stoppages happen. If they happen, it means the ride's computer is doing exactly as it should do, and holding a ride carriage in a block zone whilst the engineers and/or computer system can make an analysis of why the ride has stopped and how safely to get it moving again. Anyway, moving on. If you've enjoyed this video and find it useful, please press the like button and let us know your feedback, good or bad, in the comments section below. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon in the next Pleasure Beach Experience video.